My failure to respect women and the intimidating contact I engage in at times is inexcusable.
Contrite and determined to make profound changes, San Diego Mayor Bob Filner says he's heading into a counseling clinic to deal with his behavior problems. Can Filner survive at City Hall? That's anyone's guess. I'm Mark Sauer. The KPBS Roundtable starts now.
Let me be absolutely clear. The behavior I have engaged in over many years is wrong. My failure to respect women and the intimidating contact I engage in at times is inexcusable. It has undermined what I have spent my whole professional life working on, fighting for equality and justice for all people. And it is simply not acceptable for me to try to explain away my conduct as the product of the standards of a different generation. I apologize to my staff. I apologize to the citizens and staff members who have supported me over many years. I apologize to the people of San Diego. And most of all, I apologize to the women that I have offended. Over the last week or so, I have reached out to the men and women who have served on my staff and others who I have worked with over the years and apologize for my behavior. In addition, we have instituted changes in how the mayor's office is run. However, words alone are not enough. I am responsible for my conduct, and I must take responsibility for my conduct by taking action so that such conduct does not ever happen again. So beginning on August 5th, I will be entering a behavior counseling clinic to undergo 2 weeks of intensive therapy to begin the process of addressing my behavior. During this time period, I will be at the clinic full-time, though every morning and evening I will be briefed on city activities. This intensive counseling will just be the first step in what will be a continuing program that will involve ongoing regular counseling. I must become a better person. And my hope is that becoming a better person, I put myself in a position to someday be forgiven. However, before I even think of asking for forgiveness, I need to demonstrate that my behavior has changed. And that will only happen over time, and only if such incidents never, ever happen again. So when I return on August 19th, my focus will be on making sure that I am doing right by this city in terms of being the best mayor I can be and the best person I must be. Thank you.
The mayor's apology and vow to become a better person brings swift responses from city council members and those in his own party who will be running the city while he's in rehab. There's lots to discuss. Joining me at the KPBS Roundtable today from the KPBS Newsroom are Enterprise reporter Claire Tregesser, investigative reporter Amitha Sharma, and Metro reporter Santhia Dirks. It was high drama at City Hall today when Mayor Filner stepped to the podium to apologize and say he's seeking help. Claire, you were down at the mayor's startling press conference. Set the scene for us. What was it like down there?
Well, it was packed. There was media, local and national media, and they ushered us into a conference room on the mayor's floor of City Hall. There was probably 30, 40 news cameras there, and then lots of reporters. Lene Lewis, who's on the mayor's communication staff, came out and said the mayor would read a prepared statement and would not take any questions. And then the mayor came out a few minutes later and read his statement.
The one we just saw, of
yes.
course. Yeah. All right, so let's take a little closer look at that statement. We've heard it now several times. We've had time to probe it a little bit. Sandy, take us through what some things popped out at you.
Well, it's more interesting for what he didn't say than what he actually said, and for the way he sort of danced around the accusations that have come out from very specific women this week. He never really talked about the allegations against him. He only did these sort of vague moments where he said, yes, I've done something wrong. Yes, I've need therapy. But again, never actually took on the allegations. And there was one sort of word that really it stood out to me when he said that I apologize to the women I have offended. And what I found so interesting about that is that what we're hearing and what we've heard this week is a lot more than just women who are offended. And so that seems to me almost to be a downplaying of what actually these allegations are about.
Amitha, what struck you?
What struck me is that it's been a devastating week for the mayor. You know, we've had just a string of women coming out and, you know, in very graphic detail describing what Bob Filner allegedly did to them. And it's not pretty. And I think that he's aware of it. He's heard everything. He had a very carefully crafted political, strategic statement, and it was legally crafted too. Of course, he can't say, I did this, but he came pretty close to saying he did this, because why do you need an apology if you didn't do
Haven't done
this?
something wrong.
No,
Right?
we're going to get in depth in a moment here to the accusations and how we got to this point this week. But would you say it vindicates what a lot of these women who came forth and put their names to this?
You know, I have to say, I don't know that these women need vindication. I mean, I know that the blogosphere is full of demands for these women's credentials to even come forward and say this. But, you know, when these women at least came forward and talked about their alleged experiences, it was as if they were replaying a video in their mind. They were candid. They didn't halt in their presentation at all. It was as if they were reliving it. And that came through with each and every person. When Irene McCormick came before those cameras on Monday, there was indignation there. There was anger there. On Tuesday, when the aide came forward, wow.
We're going to get to all of that in a second. We're going to parse that. I did want to come out of the mayor's statement here and get to the swift reaction, as I said at the top. Council President Todd Gloria, a fellow Democrat, said this: Bob Filner's announcement that he will be taking a leave here prolongs the pain he's inflicting on our city at a time when San Diegans are calling for an end to the civic nightmare. Fellow Republicans in the council also renewed their calls for him to resign. Kevin Faulconer, Lori Zaff, Scott Sherman, Mark Kersey, not a surprise. Filner, a Democrat, of course. Sandy, what's his party saying?
Well, the National Democratic Party has come out today and asked for his resignation. They say that, you know, his behavior is the allegations of his behavior are beyond the pale and he should resign. And that's, in addition, that comes right on the heels of the San Diego Democrats meeting last night. They had a meeting last week where they were split 50-50.
Stayed on the fence last week.
Exactly. But this week they came forward and they said, it's time. We really cannot stick with somebody where women have come forward. This just goes against the ideals of our party.
People on both sides of the aisle are calling for this.
Yeah.
And yet,
Yesterday,
go ahead, Claire. I'm sorry.
Senator Barbara Boxer said if she were him, she would resign as well. So.
And Nancy Pelosi said that, look, if you want treatment, if you want therapy, do it on your own time.
Exactly.
Now, notably, though, three other Democrats in the council, Marty Emerald, who's been out of town, Sherry Leitner, and Myrtle Cole, the newest member, they haven't said anything yet, have they?
No, they haven't said anything, and we've all been contacting them repeatedly to ask if they have any statement on this. I covered Myrtle Cole in the campaign, and she really owed a lot to Bob Filner, I think. So maybe that's why.
All right, we're going to read here. I want to get this statement here, and this is from Democratic National Committee Chair Debbie Wasserman Schultz, Congresswoman from Florida. The misconduct Mayor Bob Filner has been accused of is reprehensible and indefensible. For the good of the city of San Diego, I call on Mayor Filner to resign. That's some of the national calls that we're referring to right there. Now, absent from this press conference today was Walt Eckert, who supposedly is in the wheelhouse, hand on the helm, running the ship of state as the mayor deals with this swirling controversy. He wasn't there standing with the mayor. Did we read anything into that? I mean, it was notable.
I mean, the major question, or one of the major questions from this is, if Filner says he's going to be debriefed on city issues every morning and evening, is he then the decision maker? Is he going to say, okay, let's do this and send decisions back to the city? Or is someone else going to be making those decisions while he's gone? And if so, who? Lee Burdick, his newly appointed chief of staff as of this
Third
week.
one in 2 weeks.
Right, exactly. Was standing next to him. So maybe that sends the message that she will be in charge. Walt Eckert was not at the press conference, so I don't know what kind of message that
And is that all
sends.
it takes? Do you need to just be briefed in the morning and briefed in the evening
What if a
to
decision
run the
happens
city.
in the middle of the day that needs to be thought about and you can't get to the mayor? Do we just sort of stop?
So these are all the questions that we're left with from
They
this
sure
press
are. We're
conference.
going to have a ton of stories on that. All right. We got to this point after the mayor insisted he could not defend himself against vague accusations made at press conferences. Who are the accusers? What are the specific allegations? Filner said he wanted to know. He got his wish this week. A lawsuit rolled out in a press conference on Monday by Filner's former head of communications and a nationally known women's rights attorney, and then a series of exclusive interviews with KPBS by 6 more professional women, each relating disturbing encounters with the mayor. What emerged in these? We're going to play a montage of some of those before we get to this question.
Whispered sexual comments in my ear.
And he proceeded to take his hand and pat me on my posterior and laugh and say, no, it's still there.
I remember his hands on me. I don't remember if they were on my neck, but it was very frightening and insulting.
And he came up and gave me a hug, and then he touched me, actually groped me on my backside inappropriately.
And Bob stepped between me and the doorway, and he stopped me, and he got very close to me. And he ran his finger up my cheek like this, and he whispered to me, do you have a man in your life?
I turned, and he just slobbered down my chin, and I was so violated.
He's held me and held me too tight, a kiss on the cheek, which is inappropriate, hand on the knee that lasted too long.
Now, what emerged from these interviews, Amitha, was an MO, a modus operandi, a pattern. What do you make of all these interviews, and explain that pattern for us after you've talked to a lot of these women?
Well, I think devastating for Bob Filner, emboldening for women who might remain out there who haven't yet shared their stories, either with the Sheriff's Department who's investigating Bob Filner or the public if they want to. I think, what you heard were several women, and let me preface this by saying, if these accusations came from clerks, low-level clerks, street sweepers, the credibility we can't judge. But you did hear from well-established, highly respected, well-educated, articulate women this week who, again, very candidly, in great detail, described their experiences. It's for the public to decide whether they were credible.
And as we did our interviews on KPBS and rolled this out this week, we asked those questions. I said, in your experience as reporters, do you find these credible? Because a lot of it is he said, she said. We heard a lot of complaints earlier, and today as this news is breaking about, it's just rumors still, it's just allegations. But you reporters found them credible when you sat down and looked these women in the eye.
Well, I think that there was the kind of having to sit down and talk with these women and really see them, I think you said this earlier, see them relive something, have them go through something which felt incredibly emotional, raw, and vulnerable. There's also the fact that I know that Laura told me, and I know several of the women told you, that the reason they were coming forward was not to get validation from Mayor Filner, was not to even file a lawsuit. It was so that other women would feel comfortable coming forward. It was about giving back voice.
And that is key. I mean, I know Irene McCormick is the exception here, but the 4 women who came forward yesterday, what's the upside for them?
Exactly,
Really?
yeah.
I mean, what do they have to gain? They're not, again, trying to get money. They're not filing a lawsuit. That's not taking anything away from Irene McCormick. But the point is they really went out on a limb here to do this.
It seems like
ahead,
there's
Claire.
very little for them to gain in coming forward, especially for things that have happened in the past that they are now bringing to light.
And if anything, there could be a downside because, again, they're highly respected, well-educated, held powerful positions in San Diego. And again, people can raise that question, well, why didn't you say anything? Maybe you could have spared us. So,
or how is a powerful woman? Did you take this? Their own identities are being questioned, and they become sort of victimized. So there is a real delicacy in coming forward.
And they had a sense of that. They really had a sense of that. But I think the superseding motive for them was, look, there are women who are being told they can't work in a room with Mayor Bob Filner because these sexual harassment allegations are hanging hanging over him. And we can't sit back in silence. That would be devastating to them.
All right, KPBS has some more news on this front today. We have obtained the legal declaration of Christopher Baker, 23-year-old college student who served as an intern this spring in Mayor Filner's office. Baker worked on the communications team with Irene McCormick Jackson and Lene Lewis. In his declaration provided to attorney Marco Gonzalez, Baker says he often saw the mayor berate and belittle women and use the word bitch often. Most disturbing, Baker says, were two incidents he witnessed. One following a press conference in La Jolla where the mayor zeroed in on a woman during a photo op, told her she was beautiful, asked if she were single. Baker said the mayor was touchy with her in ways he never was with men. He asked a member of Filner's security detail about what he'd seen, and the officer replied, quote, "You know, CJ, this is the hardest part of my job, watching him do this." A more serious incident, Baker says in his declaration, happened when Filner filled in as a host of a morning radio show, not on KPBS, I should note. Powerful members of the community were scheduled as guests, Baker says. After the show, he says the mayor disappeared with a woman he declines to name, but describes as a high-level education administrator. They went to an unlit area. Baker says a security officer asked where the mayor was. When Baker told him, the officer let out a defeated sigh and awaited the man's return. Baker says he told Lene Lewis about it. Her response, "If such an incident occurs again, tell her immediately." So, panel, does this sound familiar?
Well, that's the thing that I think is so interesting, that if you're looking at credibility and if you're looking at where to judge these allegations, there really is a pattern. There are things that echo throughout different people's accounts. And here you have not somebody who says that Mayor Filner did anything to him. You have a young man coming forward saying, "I saw this happen," and what he's describing, again, it resonates with the other stories, with the same questions that Filner has been accused of asking, the same pulling women into dark corners and getting them alone. There really does seem to be this sort of MO, we've heard it called, but this sort of bigger pattern emerging.
Which was also described by Marco Gonzalez and Donna Fry when they had their press conference, where they described specific stories of women's interactions but didn't name their names. And I think Marco Gonzalez even said then there's a pattern of his behavior, and this is the pattern, and all the stories that we've heard since then do match that pattern.
And one thing that's also interesting that stands out for me is, I interviewed Morgan Rose. She's the San Diego Unified School psychologist, and what she described was that she sat across a booth from him at Marie Callender's, and he said that her eyes had bewitched him, and then he stands up, comes across, sits next to her in the booth, and tries to kiss her 4 times. What does that constitute? Did he cross the criminal line? Is it still civil? Does it fall under any category? I think, the Sheriff's Department, the State Attorney General's office, they've got the answers, but at what point after we hear these stories time and again is anyone saying, "Ooh, wait a minute"?
There's some line that's
Well,
been
I think
crossed.
one thing to point out there is that the statute of limitations for reporting that, I think, is 1 year in California.
Well, another wrinkle in all this is city attorney, that is, Jan Goldsmith, has said women are not to be alone and not unaccompanied with the mayor.
But there's a political paradox in that, because the city attorney's office also told me that the person responsible for enforcing that kind of loose rule is actually the chief of staff. Now, of course,
Lee Burdick, a woman.
The new chief of staff is a woman. So the gender of the person enforcing Filner not be alone with women is a woman.
And does that mean that he can't meet with his chief of staff alone, which seems kind of essential to
And then what about, does that not open the city to some kind of liability? You're denying the women their ability to do their job?
And the constituents to meet with the mayor.
Right.
Let's turn to another note here. We're going to get to the recall news that's also happening today in a moment. But Jan Goldsmith, the city attorney, was asked earlier this week what else sort of, short of resignation or recall, could get the mayor out of office. And here's what he said.
The civil grand jury has the power to remove an elected official if after a full hearing they conclude that there is corruption and willful misconduct. There is a legal issue as to whether that applies to a charter city. We haven't reviewed that because we're not representing a civil grand jury, but there is a civil grand jury in San Diego County. That's another option.
So, not a lot of options. Recall by citizens, resignation. Let's talk about that recall. What's happening on that front today?
Oh, yeah. So there was supposed to be a press conference with Michael Palomari, who is a land use consultant who has been kind of leading the recall effort so far. He started the Recall Bob Filner Facebook page, and he's also the only person, I think, in San Diego history who has led a successful recall about 10 years ago. And so he actually came into the mayor's office while all of the media was waiting for this press conference with the mayor and said that he had a letter to deliver to the mayor. He said that he'd been trying to get in touch with the mayor to deliver it to him privately and that no one from the mayor's staff was returning his phone calls. I don't know if that's true, if he was looking for the media event of delivering the letter or if he actually couldn't get in touch.
And that's not the only recall campaign underway.
We've got dueling campaigns. Tell us about that.
We do. So you've got Stamp Corbin, who is the owner and publisher of the LGBT Weekly. He has also filed an announcement that he has begun a recall campaign, and he told me that the clock starts ticking now on this, which gives 60 days for the whole process to work itself out. He says he's not a Filner supporter, but he's not against him either. He just wants this process to get going. He wants San Diegans to have their say, and he says he'll help anyone who wants to gather petitions, but he's not sure he's necessarily going to go out there.
But
now,
can
we checked this afternoon.
Simultaneous recalls?
That is actually something I do not completely understand.
We checked this afternoon. He is a registered Democrat, so there has been some speculation already that is this a Filner trying to cut it off at the pass, a Filner supporter who wants to run the clock out?
He has said, very specifically that he is not a Filner supporter. So just I want to make sure that those are his words.
Although I think the LGBT Weekly was supportive of Filner during his mayoral campaign and very anti-Carl DeMaio, his opponent.
Well, they ran some very incendiary articles against Carl DeMaio and his partner.
Right.
Now, let's talk a little bit. We mentioned on Lee Burdick, the new chief of staff. She replaces Tony Buckles, Colonel Tony Buckles, who was a longtime chief of staff in Bob Filner's congressional days. He, in turn, replaced his original chief of staff, Vince Hall, who resigned almost 3 weeks ago when this scandal
2 weeks ago,
began.
actually on Friday.
And what was, let's go back to Vince Hall. What was his reasons in the statement? He had 2 tweets, one when he started and one when he ended, and basically what did he say?
Well, before this, he'd been the director of Planned Parenthood, and it's funny, he actually had never updated his Twitter profile to say that he was the chief of staff for the mayor, but he tweeted once when he started saying, "I'm pleased to accept the invitation to become the mayor's chief of staff," and then he tweeted once more on Friday, saying 2 Fridays ago, saying, "Because of my respect for women, I can't continue on to serve in this administration."
And so then we get the announcement that Tony Buckles is coming in. Well, he's comfortable with him. He worked with him in Washington for years.
People were referring to him as the Filner whisperer.
Yeah, okay. And so he came in and he was going to help the mayor and get through this. And he lasted, I don't know, count the days.
Yeah.
About 10 days, I think. Yeah.
And then Tom Shepard, political consultant Tom Shepard, we hear has been advising him, but we also hear that he left last Saturday, ostensibly to work for Sheriff Bill Gore's re-election campaign. Again, the Sheriff's Department is investigating Bob Filner, so that's a conflict, and that gives Tom Shepard an out.
And in addition, there were
4, I think.
Were there 4? There were 4 sort of prominent San Diego political figures who were working with Tom Shepard, who left, who also resigned. I mean, how many times can we say the term resign? But who also resigned as protest. They did this to sort of say, no, we're stepping away. This is a matter of conviction.
Yeah. I think it's very interesting. I mean, no matter what ends up happening with Mayor Filner, when you think about the number of careers, basically, that have been collateral damage throughout this entire process, the number of different people who have been affected in some way, who had a job and now have left that job or changed their job, it's staggering.
And one wonders what's going to happen for the people who remain because they've remained so long. What's the future of their careers?
When we did get this declaration from Christopher J. Baker, There's an interesting moment in it. One of the few people that's still sort of by the mayor's side in the same position is Lene Lewis, who's sort of basically his communications director. And there's this incident that this young intern who was working under Lene Lewis for the communications department, he talked to her, and she about after he saw him go with a woman down a long dark corridor by himself, and he told her that this had happened, and he says, Lene said, if an incident like that occurs again, relate the details to me immediately. Mm-hmm. So there's this sense of what people know, what they don't know, what they believe,
seeing.
what they're seeing. All of this sort of things that are happening in the shadows, and the mayor's office is very, very much in the shadows.
Well, it's interesting. This is the first male voice to come out, and we hope to see more.
There are many, many more men who remain to be questioned about what they knew. What did you see? Why didn't you come forward? Or did you come forward? I mean, again, we think there's one complaint that was filed with the city of San Diego, sexual harassment complaint against the mayor. When you hear about all these allegations that are out there, it's kind of hard to grok.
All right, we're going to have to leave it there. That wraps up another week of stories on the KPBS Roundtable. I'd like to thank my guests, all from KPBS, Amitha Sharma, Claire Tregesser, and Sandhya Dirks. Our complete coverage of the embattled mayor is on the Filner Files. That's on our website, kpbs.org. I'm Mark Sauer, and thanks for listening today to the Roundtable.